Back when it was a thing, meaning Texas, Oklahoma leave for the SEC, make that announcement. Then the following summer, USC, UCLA to the Big Ten. When that was a thing, we were talking about all sorts of possibilities involving Florida State and other teams in the ACC. We addressed this many times, but we can do it right here if you guys, of course, Florida State first and foremost. So if we don't want to miss anything with FSU, if there's anything that we need to get to, Logan, so just let us know, keep us honest. But Kevin's asking, what are your thoughts about Florida State going to the Big Ten?
I can actually speak this firsthand because I spoke to somebody today involved with NBC Sports handling how they're dealing with signing the exact comment that was made, and I'm going to clean up the language that was used, was, and I quote, Miami effed it up for Florida State. Plan was in place all along. We talked about last offseason about what would be a great move as you bring in two teams from the West Coast, bring Miami and Florida State. The Big Ten was all set to bring in Florida State and Miami if they had good seasons. Florida State lived up to their end of the bargain. Miami screwed it by going 5-7. Now, the Big Ten is not exactly sure they can trust that Miami is going to improve. So that's the question right now: is do you take a gamble? Because it's obviously on paper, if you're going with just football, you would take Florida State and Clemson from the ACC. But the fact of the matter is Florida State and Miami are tied together. If Florida State leaves to the Big Ten, Miami's going to come along with them for various reasons. State of Florida, supremacy. You got to have that natural rivalry between the two teams. So that's the question is, does the Big Ten go out and take a gamble and go with Miami? Because right now, Florida State's on up. Miami is down. Do you take the gamble that Miami will have a bounce-back season in 2023, try to come in and say 2024 possibility? But yes, to answer Kevin's question, the Big Ten want Florida State. The Big Ten has made it clear they like the way Florida State is moving as an athletics program as a whole. They like the way Florida State is moving up academically. They like the fact that we are on track to become an AAU university. They do like that fact. The plan it was initially in place was a Florida State and Miami, and to bring two more teams from what is now the Pac-12. Whether that was Cal and Stanford, whether that was Oregon and Washington, whoever, that was not a known fact. But yes, to answer the question, Miami screwed it up for us. Another reason for us to hate Miami, there you go.
I think, just Miami. I was just going to mention real quick before Mark says something. I was going to mention Miami's going to bring viewership, and I understand the wins thing. I think you can evaluate what they did this year, but the Rutgers, Northwestern.
Oh, yeah.
What else is in that conference? Miami is quadrupling by 1 million in viewership for them. So money-wise, I'm sure that would be very attractive for the Big Ten to go after Miami. They'll do their job on that part, but on the field success is a different story.
What helps Miami's argument is the program. They've got a decent decent men's basketball team. Their football team is a decent team every single season. They're also with us on the trajectory of possibly becoming an AAU program. So that helps them as a case like that. And to answer your question about viewership, yes, 3 of the top 20 TV markets in the nation are all in the state of Florida. Florida State helps bring that in, and Miami solidifies it. We also help tap into the market. It also helps make it a nationwide brand. The fact of the matter is we need to have a natural rival. If we went to the SEC, we would have Florida. If we go to the Big Ten, we need somebody like Miami. So that's the question: is if you were the Big Ten, do you say, all right, we want Florida State, we have to take Miami, despite the fact they went 5-7 this season? That's why if you look at it, it's imperative for Miami to show up this season. I'm not saying they need to go out and be 12-0, but Miami has to be much better this season.
If I'm running the Big Ten, I'm making decisions based on 3 things: money, football, and academics. And before anybody laughs at the academics portion of that, just understand that the money involved in the academic side of this is actually completely dwarfs the football money when we talk about academic endowments. So based on all the information I've gathered, and we've got a guy, his name's Tony Altimore, that comes on, and we had him on here, that breaks down the numbers and all of that. Florida State and Miami are attractive to the Big Ten academically. So they fit the mold of what the Big Ten is looking for there. Jason brings up a good point. The Big Ten has reached out to the West Coast and they've grabbed the two biggest brands on the West Coast, USC and UCLA. If they go to Florida, then they are truly, yes, a completely national brand. They already are, but they solidify that completely. The reason I take the gamble and go to Florida and I take Florida State, Miami, even if Miami is a lackluster team in the Big Ten, even if they never turn the corner and they churn out 5 and 7 win seasons every year and they're just another Illinois or Rutgers in the Big Ten, the recruiting. This is the only thing the Big Ten doesn't have. They don't have Florida recruiting. The Big Ten has all the money in the world. They've got all the media rights. They've got enormous football brands, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC. They've got more people watching their games than any conference. SEC fans actually look at the TV ratings. It's close, but the Big Ten and the SEC are neck and neck in regards to, if you look at the top 5 to 10 games every week, they're SEC and Big Ten games. What they don't have, though, is players. They have to travel to get players. Now, of course, there are players in Ohio and there are players in Michigan, but there's not enough of them. And if they can establish 2 of their main schools in Florida, then they can recruit and not just fill up Florida State, Miami with players, but Michigan's going to come down, Penn State's even more so than they do now, and get more players and be able to sell those players on, join the Big Ten. We play Florida State, Miami every year, and you can have the best of both worlds.
And there's some like Ohio State, the best player from American Heritage, receiver Brandon Innes went to Ohio State this year. So they do get occasionally, but there are 2 things to finish up, say, before you go. The Big Ten has to make it sexy because of the fact that the new contract, they continue their contract with Fox, and they sign on the season with a new contract with CBS and NBC. If you can get Miami and Florida State in there, you get that game on NBC. You know, you may not get Michigan, Ohio State because Fox will probably grab that one first still every single year. But you're going to get an Ohio State, Penn State. You're going to get a Michigan State. You're going to get a USC, Michigan, or, you know, a Nebraska, UCLA. You're going to get some decent games there, number one. Number two, I don't think we talk about it enough. The alumni bases in the state of Florida for Ohio State, for Michigan. You know, Logan talked a little bit about schools like Rutgers, schools like Indiana, schools like Maryland. If you've got 1 year, Florida State's hosting Miami, Michigan, and Penn State, and the next season is hosting Florida, Ohio State, and Michigan State, and then Miami's hosting Michigan 1 year, Ohio State the next year. Those are sellouts. Those schools are going to make the money. Money is going to roll in like crazy. And just to finish up with what you said, academically, we're talking about billions of dollars in money that is going to come into these schools if they join the Big Ten. And the one question you have to ask right now, I'll say this before I go, the Big Ten just lost their commissioner, Kevin Warren, who just took a job in the executive office of the Chicago Bears. Where did the ACC's commissioner come? Where did he come from? Look where Jim Phillips came from.
I don't know where he came from offhand.
I believe he came from Northwestern, if I'm correct, or at some point had some experience with Big Ten. If he goes to the Big Ten as their commissioner, do not be surprised if it happens sooner rather than later.
We'll see, but I also got to wonder with the SEC, is that going to be, will they ever let that happen? Let them come down here to the Southeast and do that? That's the thing. That's where this is probably going to last longer than we might expect, because we were hearing things this last offseason, and during the season, it's gone quiet, and it's gone very quiet. And, you know, Michael Alford has kind of spoken on a few things, and, you know, he's made some hires behind the scenes that are literally made to go through these negotiations, and it's going to be a long process, but it's going to be SEC versus Big Ten. I think every FSU fan wants to get out of the ACC, but it's going to take a little while because this is a big brand. You look at the viewership that Florida State put on this year too. And one of the biggest bowl games that was watched outside the playoffs, and then all throughout the season, the numbers that they put up, you know, the brand is very much here. The fan base is here, and a lot of you know, people that love college football will watch Florida State. And now that it is uprising, it's just going to continue to be a negotiation battle, I think, between teams and Miami and Florida State, and then you're dealing with the conferences that are wanting them inside of their linemen.
Real quick, Phillips, 13 seasons as the athletic director at Northwestern before he came here. And just to answer what I said, yes, we do travel to BC, Pitt, and Syracuse. I agree with that. That being said, a game against Penn State, games against Michigan State, those are going to be on NBC, CBS, or Fox, versus games at Syracuse, which are on the ACC network. There is a huge difference from a TV aspect to being on a broadcast network versus being on a regional cable network or on the ACC network. It's a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite sites, folks. If you look up college football TV ratings, you go right to a site. I forget the name of it. They will show you every network game each week and the numbers that come in, all the way down to ESPNU, the Big Ten Network, all those ACC network games. And just look at the TV ratings. That'll just open your eyes to who holds the power in the sport. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. All right. And of course, Florida State, fortunately for them, they're not going to get left out because they're one of the few not in those two conferences that have a enormous brand and appeal. So